You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Naruto Enters Ugly Americans? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of pyrohelixdrago on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. With Naruto. You are so evil. Callie said to Naruto as she laid on his chest thoroughly spent and satisfied from their morning quickie after waking up. Thank you. Naruto said to her. I made the right choice. Callie said as binding herself to him was the greatest thing ever. Well, I am glad you are happy. Naruto said lovingly as he grabbed her hand. I will put a ring on this finger in the future, you can be sure of that, he said, making her shiver slightly. What will you take me to a church? Callie said jokingly as she was the only demon to be baptized, due to her mother's insistence. I don't know, it could be one hell of a joke. I mean, just picture your dad's reaction to his daughter getting married in a Catholic church of all places. Naruto said with a laugh and grin. The fact it'd PSS her father off made it more appealing, and demon weddings kinda, and she didn't want to give the entirety of hell front row access to watching her and Naruto consummate their marriage. Well, I guess we have something to maybe look forward to in the future then, huh? Callie said with a grin, drawing circles on Naruto's chest with her finger. You have a lot of things to look forward to. Naruto said, starting another round, getting a throaty from Callie as their lovemaking resumed. And so do I. With Naruto. What the hell, Mark? This guy ripped a guy's arm off, seems cut and dry. Naruto said as he, Mark, and Leonard were sitting in a courtroom watching the trial of a werewolf named Matthew Thornton. Apparently Matthew wanted to go to a concert or something and thus ripped a guy's arm off his body, all because he wanted the tickets the guy had. In Naruto's opinion, what the werewolf needed was a fine and severe obedience training. Come on, how many times does this happen with werewolves? Mark said to him jokingly. It happens when they don't go through the program. Naruto said as there were programs for newly turned monsters. That program is demeaning to them as potential citizens, Mark counters. In his opinion, Mark holds a lot of respect for those who are miraculously sane once going through the system. The whole process is so dehumanizing, which is the best term he could work with, given the multi-race and species out there who aren't humans. After all, what's wrong with treating them with a little compassion? No offense, Mark, but it's better than forcibly making a person another species and ripping off others' limbs or death. Either way, he is your problem. Wait, what? Naruto merely gestured to Mark to focus back on the hearing, in which the judge who had just given Matt through his sentence of going through the DOI's custody. It was either that or locking him in prison, all due to the defense provided by Werewolf's lawyer, who was literally a giant baby that had just dumped a bowl of spaghetti on his head. Mark could only sigh as he heard the prosecutor yell out. Really, Judge, this is the 7th case in a row he has won using the bowl of spaghetti. This got a snicker from Naruto and caused Mark to pinch the bridge of his nose in irritation. With Callie. The half-human half-demon had decided to use her lunch break to go and visit her mother regarding some thoughts she had been having lately regarding her relationship with Naruto and the future. Hey Mom, Callie says, flying into her mother's penthouse apartment through an open window. Callie, it's good to see you, though I will say this is a bit of a surprise as you usually call before coming over. Rosie says, walking over and giving her daughter a hug, which Callie returns. Callie smiled as her mother was the only one she showed her human nature and feelings to, other than Naruto. Yeah, I know, but it was a bit of a split-second decision to stop by, she said with a nervous look. Oh Lord, what did your father do now? Rosie asked, figuring that her ex-husband was the reason for her daughter's abrupt visit. It's not Daddy this time. Callie said as like all demon fathers, hers went out of their way to make her either miserable or extremely violent. Well, that's a surprise. Is everything alright with Naruto? Rosie asked, hoping that was the case, as she was quite fond of the blonde, finding him to be a great influence on her daughter, accepting her for who she was and not trying to change her or make her lean towards one side of her heritage over the other. Callie's hair lit on fire and her face turned red. The mother smiled, taking a wild guess as to why her daughter was here, and brought her to the living room. Alright honey, now tell me what it is regarding Naruto that has you so worked up this time. Rosie says with a small smile, as this wasn't the first time her daughter had come over looking for advice about the blonde. I keep dreaming about a baby dash, Callie was saying till her mother squealed, making her smile and roll her eyes. Oh, what was it, a boy or girl? Rosie asked, wondering how her daughter pictured her own baby. Callie often saw a powerful baby with reddish-orange hair, a combination of her and Naruto's hair, and it was chaos for demons and everything else out there. It's not like that, Mom. It's more like lately whenever I am with Naruto and we are resting from our well activities, my mind drifts to the future and what could happen, and something that has been popping up lately has been maybe having a baby with Naruto, she says, explaining what she has been thinking and dreaming. Callie, that's wonderful. So what's the issue? Rosie asks, not understanding why her daughter was worried. That's just it, I never wanted to be a mother before. I always had my life planned out to an extent, and even when Naruto entered it and we started dating, that didn't change. Yet for some reason lately I have been thinking about a future where we get married, have a baby, and go from there. Callie, love, actually honest and true love, will do that to you. You love Naruto in such a pure and true way that you are thinking of altering what you had initially planned for in your life. Rosie says, holding her daughter's hand comfortingly and giving her a smile. Maybe you're right, I mean I did make a sec deal with him last night. Callie says with a smile. This got Rosie to sternly narrow her eyes at her daughter. Callie Maggotbone, you had best not being saying you stole that wonderful young man's soul or enslaved him. No, nothing like that, I swear. Actually I sort of bound myself and swore to Naruto. Callie says shyly as she blushes. Rosie's eyes widen in shock at hearing this before she smiles. You see, Callie, that right there is proof that you truly love Naruto. You were willing to and did swear yourself to him, binding the two of you in such an empty way. The only greater way to bind would be via marriage. For further proof of how your love is true, let me ask you this. Could you see yourself making the same deal you made with Naruto last night with any of your ex-boyfriends? Rosie says before asking her daughter. Hell no, I would sooner fly up to heaven and get down on my knees and SCK off all the angels before munching on God's PP before I made such a deal with any of my exes. Callie said determinedly, her hair briefly turning to fire in her rage. You see, that shows the love you have for Naruto. Not to mention, from the sounds of it, you kind of laid it out to him that you wanted to marry him with that deal you made. Rosie said in a motherly tone. He actually said he'd propose in the future. Callie said, muttering under her breath. Oh. Rosie said in excitement, nearly tackling her daughter into a hug. You should have him get you a promise ring, she said, as promise rings were promises toward marriage. Ugh, Mom. This isn't the 90s anymore, promise rings are so lame, Callie says with a groan, though she also has a smile on her face. Oh, I never said it was a normal promise ring you would wear on your finger. In fact, I still have the one your father gave me. Rosie says with a raised eyebrow and coy smirk on her face. MOM. Callie yells, her eyes going wide in embarrassment as her face flushes and hair turns to fire. Oh, lighten up, dear, you had to have realized I was a bit open, shall we say, given how I was willing to not only marry your father but also willing to be impregnated by the devil. Rosie said with a grin and shifting of her legs resulting in a light clinking sound to be heard. Technically Daddy isn't the devil. Callie states. Only being the ruler of hell for a time and dash. Oh, I know, but it's just semantics. Regardless, my point stands. Rosie says with a wave of her hand, finding the higher-up workings of hell to be rather ridiculous. Anyways, moving on, do you have any more interesting things going on in your life you wish to talk about? Rosie adds with a heart-left grin. Callie smiled at that, and for the next hour the mother and daughter talked about various things going on in their lives. At the doi. Inside of the session room, Mark and Naruto were helping through today's session with the future American citizens. The present activity they were going through involved trust exercises. Not a lot could be done, but the two doi employees were seeing things through. Most were doing trust falls, involving one person catching the other. It was simple, yet effective. Though with the worm creature, Martin, it involved the two heads being blindfolded and weirdly caressing each other's faces. However, one couple was not doing so great. In attendance in the class session was Matthew the werewolf along with Phil, the one who he mauled. The reason for Phil's attendance was rather complicated. With him now going through the changes of becoming a werewolf, involuntarily, he needed to also get processed for this new change in his life. And suffice to say he wasn't happy in the slightest. Phil's left arm was still a stump all the while the man was rather disheveled, with him now bearing a 5 o'clock shadow as the left side of his face was recovering from the wounds inflicted upon him. And time? Mark said awkwardly, looking at the assigned pair who weren't doing a thing at all. Sorry, but I've got too much anger for this trust exercise. Phil apologized to the DOI worker. Okay, good, great way to express yourself, Phil. Naruto came up to them with a sympathetic look. Is there something to perhaps settle your issues with Matthew here? Phil nodded and looked at the full werewolf in the room. Would it be too much to ask for you to give me back my wedding ring? Matthew shifted in place, scratching his head in an awkward fashion. Sorry, I haven't passed it yet. Both Naruto and Mark cringed, realizing Matthew must have eaten Phil's hand during the assault. Phil growled in response. How convenient. Matthew, is there anything you'd like to say to help Phil deal with some of that anger? The full werewolf opened and closed his mouth a few times before speaking the first thing that came to mind. Could I interest you in a belly rub? Naruto stepped in once Phil appeared to almost snap at this. Not the right choice of words at this time. The whiskered blonde said to the werewolf. What you did to him wasn't right, and he's still traumatized by the ordeal. He soon turned to Phil, who nodded in agreement. I'm honestly surprised you haven't gone through a relapse or gone ballistic already. Phil merely shrugged a little. I've lived with a long fuse with a set series of buttons to set me off. To each their own, I suppose. Everyone has their own means of coping through a traumatic event. Some merely talk it out, going through varying activities to distract themselves, or a litany of other details. Most are good, others not so much. It's different for each person out there. Yet what Phil went through will be hard to manage. At least he will have his wife and kids to help support him, unlike most people out there who aren't fortunate. Mark soon spoke up to garner his students' attention. This is an important lesson for everyone. Without a basic level of trust, the whole city would fall apart. That's nice in theory, began Toby, the fish man, but you can't trust everybody. He said before glancing over to the hook man sitting next to him. At this point, Phil started to collapse onto the ground and go through a seizure. Oh, God, it's happening again. Naruto got to him and hoisted Phil up, who suddenly yelped when a werewolf tail jutted out of his tailbone in a sickening manner. Okay, I'm taking him to the medical ward to deal with this. Mark, would you kindly go through the next part of today's lesson? Mark cringed out a little, but gave his roommate a nod. You got it. Once Naruto was essentially dragging the changing Phil out of the classroom, Mark had Leonard to WHP up some magical slides for the class. Unfortunately, the DOI's wizard was rather peeved for some apparent reason, given he looked more hungover than usual. Leonard whipped out his wand and did as instructed. For the slideshow in Mark's lesson involved an issue a few centuries ago here in New York. Most of the native New Yorkers, who were led by the vampire William Dyer, had to quell an issue with the Irish immigrants flooding into the city. And quite frankly, a lot of tension between these groups soon went out into an all-out gang war. Now Mark wanted to censor the whole historical viewing, yet Leonard wasn't complying with the previous request, letting everyone in the classroom view everything unedited. This meant they all saw all of the butchering, the burnings, the dismemberments, defilements, everything under the disturbed rainbow. As Croatian man aptly put it, this will bring me nightmares to nearly everyone. Oh, sorry, everyone, said Mark, who went to stop Leonard on projecting the historical viewing. We'll pick it up from here next time. With that said, Mark harshly grabbed Leonard and dragged him out of the classroom and brought them into their shared office. And just in time too when Naruto came around as well, aptly confused on what happened. What the hell was that all about? Mark snapped at the DOI's wizard. Said man ignored Mark, merely playing with a weird pen set resembling the infamous sword in the stone. Naruto watched in amusement as he saw the relic as it was cheap CRP in his opinion. Have I ever told you how much I like this magic pen set? Leonard asked. Yes, many times. Mark said dryly. I'm a little more interested in this mood you're going through recently. You were supposed to come to the courthouse with us, yet you were too drunk to show up. Said Naruto. And I talked to Callie earlier and she said. You were bitching and about Christ Angel since this morning. I don't know what you're talking about. Leonard stopped playing with his pen set before grabbing his wizard hat and suddenly threw up in it. There were some chunks and liquids which sprayed out of the headpiece. Once done expelling his stomach contents, the wizard placed it back onto his head with nothing dripping out from it. Magic. That's not really impressive, like at all. Leonard pointed an accusing finger at Naruto. What do you know? Mark glanced over on Leonard's desk and saw a copy of a Christ Angel biography book. It was heavily defiled with pencil and pen marks. And a number of sticky note tabs were jotting out like everywhere. I would think this guy would be a hero to all wizards. Mark commented before opening and flipping through some random pages. I heard he's amazing. Various pages were highlighted, quite a lot with scribbles all about. Notes saying, liar, or some other illegible writings were scrawled nearly every inch available. This made Mark rather concerned with how much Leonard hated this man, but didn't know why. The answer to Mark's present set of questions would soon be answered once he came upon a rather startling sight. Wait, Leonard. Mark flipped the book around and presented the page with a photo of Leonard inside of it, who Christ Angel was giving a noogie to. What are you doing in this? Oh, Leonard said trailing off. Are you friends? We're not friends. He's his brother. Naruto said as he did in fact know what Leonard's last name was as he did read up on people's files and Callie did in fact search through people's lives looking for either blackmail or something to laugh at. What? Mark asked in surprise, finding that hard to believe as the man in the picture was considered a celebrity at Magic and Leonard was himself. Wow, really? We have the same mother. Right. And father. Okay dash. Like the Joneses, only there are two of us. But the name dash. Christ Angel isn't his BRTH name, he just legally changed it for the more hip crowds these days. It's originally Christine Powers. Leonard said as new age magicians sug with their weird gimmicks than the traditional ones of ages long past. No respect for the classics. That would have worked better than the exotic name he gave himself. Muttered out Naruto. Now every time I turn on the TV or come across a radio station, all I get to see and hear the annoying CRP my brother is doing now for his fame and glory. Naruto somewhat saw where this was going as Leonard was practically green with envy and jealousy. Grow some ball, Mark, he thought as Leonard was gonna play him. I'm gonna take off now. Said Mark, who soon left the office so he won't get roped into Leonard's rant fest on his brother. Naruto hoped he kept his resolve as Leonard could be a real bee at times. Few days later. How the F did this happen? Naruto said as he saw Mark on the floor with a bullet hole in his head. I don't know what I did wrong. Leonard said, receiving a punch to the face. You got Mark to shoot himself in the head with a bogus immortality gift. All because you have AF inferiority complex with your big brother. This all started out the previous night when they went to see a Christ Angel show, just to see what the whole excitement of his performances were. Granted, a good amount of the acts were rather fantastic. Unfortunately, things were relatively ruined in several instances. First off, Leonard bitching and that his big brother didn't give him credit on a bunch of the magical acts he gave him years ago and sold them off as his own. Another was how distasteful several tricks were that would normally put a person in jail, yet Christ Angel is able to get away with it. There's practically a whole list of things Naruto didn't like about the showing, but that's beside the point. Because of Leonard being humiliated in front of a massive audience, once forced to come on stage, the DOI wizard sought to prove himself as a capable magician through this big, midlife, crisis ordeal. Thus he decided to dust off his old routines and seek to have the world see him as the superior brother. In order to do that, Leonard sought to do something unthinkable which no one is able to properly pull off, bringing back someone from the dead and not becoming a zombie in the process. And of course, Leonard had Mark unknowingly roped into it by granting him immortality for 24 hours, all for this magic act. And guess what, the trick didn't work. Naruto soon called the paramedics to get Mark's body out of here. All the while knowing he'll need to contact several people soon after. While he didn't know Mark's family, or even if he still has family out there, Naruto knew Ursula would be rather saddened with what happened. Despite them not being a couple, Mark and Ursula have been seeing each other quite a lot lately and things were slowly going well for the pair. And now that's essentially ruined by Leonard. Wanting some form of payback, Naruto decided to annoy his co-worker with a taste of his own medicine. Ladies, gentlemen and Bs and CNTS of all ages, you wanna see something? Check this out. Naruto said, getting on the stage, entering Six Paths mode. As everyone saw him glow and even sparkle slightly, he took out his Hiraishin kunai and threw them all over and soon began teleporting, first starting slowly then picking up his pace, soon creating a large orange rasengan above the audience. The audience was in awe as he continued with the magical act. Earth, wind, water, fire, and lightning. Naruto said, having the elements rotate around his rasengan, and soon a appealing explosion filled with gold and the elements happened and the audience cheered. Imagine if they saw the tailed beast's power, he thought with a smirk. No. What are you doing? Leonard blurted out. He rushed and tried, and failed, to cover up what Naruto was presenting to the club attendees. There's nothing to see here. Leonard, you need to grow the hell up and realize to move on. Naruto would have said more, but his phone vibrated and he picked up his phone and saw it was a message from Callie. Saw the show, your power made me wet. I will climb you and ride you when you get to my apartment, it said with many SXL emojis along with many graphic pictures of Callie. If it's not violence, it's power that gets her going, he thought to himself with a grin. Next day. Things were rather weird since Mark died. Randall was quite devastated, but not in the typical manner. Lately, their zombie roommate has been craving to eat Mark and has been making various attempts to do so. Yet this is no longer gonna happen, as Mark will be given proper funeral rites, who explicitly stated he didn't want to be defiled in any way, shape or form after his passing. If you eat him, I'll hurt you. Naruto said, not to him, not wanting to disrespect the dead. Is he really dead? He asked himself, as Lenord may have botched the spell, but there was something odd about the corpse, and being someone who has been dead, revived, and touched by death, he was somewhat in tune with it. Now I gotta wonder who's gonna be my roommate with Mark dead. Depends on how desperate someone will be with the current economy. Said Naruto, who oddly looked beyond the fourth wall alongside Randall for several moments before focusing back at each other. At the DOI, Callie was rather quick to find Leonard's replacement, who was an evil wizard that looked and sounded an awful lot like a certain emperor. From a certain sci-fi movie franchise. He apparently fixes machinery rather quickly with his lighting magic. Oh yeah, Leonard. When mentioning Leonard's replacement, well, he decided to resign from the DOI. He was so ashamed and racked with guilt that he's presently going on the biggest bender of his life. The man was last seen doing rather dangerous body shots off the Statue of Liberty's rusted bronze melons. And at this time, Leonard will be fully out of the DOI's hands once going to the Wizards Guild to formally resign from his previous job and do something afterwards. And now we turn to the funeral of Mark Lily. It was a small service with Naruto and Mark's students being in attendance along with a handful of others such as Callie, Randall, and Ursula. Ursula was seated all alone with a depressed look upon her face. She was indeed saddened to hear what happened to Mark and was hoping to get on to the next step of their relationship. But now that will never happen. At least she'll have the fond memories she shared with him. During the funeral procession, Phil was on the podium and was giving a small speech. He was undergoing more changes of his werewolf conversion as he's more hairier and is more canine in appearance. Not to mention he was now growing back his left arm somehow. Weird on how werewolf changes go. Hi, everyone, my name's Phil. I didn't know Mark long, but seeing him here like this really hits home. Looking at death, I realize being a werewolf isn't so bad. Yet I'm still coming to terms with it as it was not only beyond my control, but also something I didn't consider getting into. Yet what can you do? And look at this, my arm's even growing back. Said Phil, awkwardly waving his stubby arm. Mark tried to teach me that. He just did a really terrible job. He then looked over to Matthew. I may not fully forgive you for what you did, but I'm willing to move past it so I may better myself and be a better person than previously. Matthew nodded in understanding as he had given Phil back his wedding ring, which had finally passed out of his digestive tract earlier today. A small round of applause went on from Mark's students as Phil left the podium. Before the next speaker would come up next. Gasp. Mark shot up from the coffin, deeply inhaling a large intake of air. You're alive. Ursula screeched out, practically rushing to the coffin and dragging him out. Oh honey, I'm so happy. She began peppering his face with kisses while wrapping her tentacles around him tightly. Holy SHT, looks like Leonard actually pulled one off, Naruto said, actually impressed. Mark pried himself away from Ursula, who was clinging onto him very affectionately. I wish I had time to explain what just happened, but I've got to stop Leonard from quitting. He soon got out of the coffin, yet stumbled. Not for him being relatively stiff, but feeling something rather off about himself. Ow. I can't believe you ate my toe. Damn it, Randall. Naruto growled out. I told you that you couldn't eat him. It was just a toe. What's the big deal? Randall said with a shrug. He wasn't gonna come back. It was a victimless crime. It was the principle of his wishes. Mark could only hobble out as best as he could, yet was being dragged back by a clingy Ursula who was ready to get down and dirty on Mark right then and there. It can be rather argued if Callie was a contributing influence on her for this or not. Who's to say? Over at the Wizards Guild, Mark, Callie, Ursula and Naruto rushed inside to halt Leonard's resignation ceremony, which was scheduled on the 12th floor. They would have gotten to the room sooner if it wasn't for the Gandalf-looking secretary making them sign in and this snobby British-looking brat hitting all of the elevator buttons. Once reaching the ceremony room, Mark burst through the doorway to see Leonard on a podium with a bunch of his office supplies. Nearby was Leonard's replacement along with Twain. And floating above them was a giant green head. Leonard, don't. Mark yelled, diving for some reason to try and stop Leonard from resigning. Don't do it. I'm alive. Who dares intrude on the president of the Wizards Guild? Said the giant floating head. Leonard's co-workers. Naruto said evenly before looking at said man. Next time you give someone immortality, be sure to confirm what type you're doing specifically. Granted. Leonard said as he was surprised Mark was even here. He soon turned around and grabbed his magic pen set, who then pulled out Excalibur, in a dramatic fashion. By the power of Excalibur, I withdraw my resignation. No, no, no. I will not be replaced and be made redundant, the Dark Wizard yells as his hand starts sparking with electricity as he prepares to electrocute Leonard and the others. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Down you go, you Palpatine-looking wannabe. Naruto said, dashing over and picking the dark wizard up, lifting him over his head and throwing him over a nearby railing, making him plummet to his apparent doom, screaming the whole way. You could have just knocked him out. The giant floating wizard head said. Meh, he was acting like Palaptin, so I figured why not send him down a reactor like him. Naruto said with a shrug. That wasn't a reactor, it was the balcony to the main lobby, the giant floating wizard head said. Huh? Naruto said with a raised eyebrow. Down in the main lobby of the building, the wizard of copyright infringement, who looked an awful lot like a certain wizard from a fantasy series involving a certain ring, was sitting at his desk about to take a bite of his sandwich when he hears a noise, causing him to look up just in time to see a blur flash down and slam into the floor in a massive splash of BLD that covered the walls, and the wizard also ruining his sandwich. I'm not cleaning that up. Naruto said, wondering how the hell not getting a job would result in melting. Maintenance. I summon thee. You as well, sandwich wizard. The Gandalf-looking wizard can be heard saying from down below. Leonard soon approached his coworker and gave him an appreciative smile. Thanks for saving me, Mark. Just promise to never encourage me again. I'll try, but you have my word. Mark said, as he didn't want to die permanently. Enough talk. You're coming with me now, Mark. Ursula said as she used her tentacles to literally drag Mark out of the building and back to her apartment for some much-needed love-making. Naruto, Callie, and Leonard looked on in shock seeing this happen before Leonard sums up the whole sight rather well by saying. Well, that just happened, and leaving to go get drunk. I have to say, seeing Ursula drag Mark off like that was kinda hot, so whatia say, your place or mine? Callie says with a purr into Naruto's ear. My place is closer. Naruto says as the two leave the office and make their way to Naruto's shared apartment, where they spend the rest of the day and night in bed, though not much sleeping gets done despite this. Next day. Inside of the bathroom, Naruto was brushing his teeth and scraping his tongue. He liked having a fresh, clean breath each day instead of the gross morning breath and taste he wakes up to all the time. He got used to it in his younger years, but now that he's an adult, it's become more of a habit than anything, especially since he got into a meaningful relationship. The shower curtain opened up, having Callie poking out of it slightly. Naruto. Yeah, hun. It's time to take our relationship to a new level. Naruto blinked before spitting out what remaining toothpaste in his mouth before looking over to his girlfriend. I have already claimed all your holes, and you bound yourself to me. What other than a future marriage and a kid is there left for us to take as a next level? He asked. There's something I want to show you. Which is? Naruto said with a brow raised in curiosity. She curled her finger, making him leak into the running shower so he would be face to face with his appealing lover. What he didn't expect was a sudden opening on her flat, fit stomach which bore an eldritch red glow. What is that? He stuttered out in utter surprise. It's my 3-hole. Callie said as she started wiggling her eyebrows at Naruto while sensually licking her lips. Naruto rubbed his eyes a little, having to adjust them from the bright light she was emitting. How the hell did I miss something like that given all the times we have had a CC? He asked. It just opened up. Opened up? He questioned, all before the eldritch red shifted to green. It changes color. I can make it blink too. Instantly, the bathroom suddenly went through a strobe light effect, making Naruto close his eyes. And it does this. Suddenly the strobe light began to drastically shift, causing the entire bathroom to quake. Okay, enough of that, babe, I think the flashing light is starting to give me a headache. At that moment, Callie closed up her 3-hole, making her frown in the process. You think it's hideous, she says, sounding a little hurt. Sorry. I don't mean to be rude at all. And to be fair, it's not ugly at all. He rubbed the back of his head in the process. It's just a lot of new information here that I never knew before. 3-hole or no 3-hole, you are still the same woman I love, Callie. Before things could continue. Dude, PND that. Instantly, both Callie and Naruto looked towards a hole in the shower wall to see Randall From the tile hole, Randall's eye was exposed as he was looking directly at them. "It's not what you think," said the zombie. "I was just watching you guys have section." Renee doll. Ugh. Callie says in disgust as she leaves the shower and wraps a towel around her body. All before exiting the bathroom entirely to finish getting ready for work. "Don't make it weird, hello. Dude, you got one hell of a massive nice piece," Randall says as he shifts his gaze to look at Naruto's exposed PP. "Seriously?" Naruto shifted around to cover himself up a little when he noticed something above him. "And Randall, is that a boom mic?" "Don't make it weird, dude, and by the way, if you could try to project a little more that would be great," Randall says from behind the wall, adjusting a camera. Instantly, the whiskered blonde grabbed a rag and shoved it into the tile hole, filling it up before leaving the bathroom soon after. "Oh sure, fill up this hole, no problem. I would have filled Callie's if it weren't for you interrupting." Duly noted. "Also there is this." In an instant, Naruto thrusts his right hand and arm through the shower wall, grabs Randall by the throat and pulled viciously, yanking the zombie through the wall entirely while also ripping his head off, sending his body flying out into the hallway outside the bathroom. "Randall, do you know why I currently have your severed head in my hand?" Naruto asked blankly, staring at his zombie roommate's head. "Because I was videotaping you and Callie F like Amsterdam wears hopped up on Spanish Fly and Joy prior to Callie revealing her 3-hole and was intending on filming more. Correct, and are you going to do it again?" Naruto asks. "Nope, not for a couple weeks at least," Randall says with a roll of his eyes. It seems you still need more incentive to not spy on us," Naruto says as he walks over to Randall's body where it laid on the floor. "Hey, what are you doing, oh holy CRP?" Randall says as Naruto literally shoves the zombie's head up his own. Surprised by how spacious it is in here, "Also get me out of here," the zombie is heard yelling from inside his own lowers. "Are you going to spy on me and Callie again?" Naruto asks. "No," Randall yells, his voice muffled due to its placement. "Good, now, spend the rest of the day there to remind yourself of your promise," Naruto says as he walks towards his room to get ready for work. While finishing getting ready for the day, Naruto received a text from Mark where they needed to go to the courthouse, involving a demon baby and custody issues. When he arrived there, Naruto held back several snickers when he saw the amount of hickeys and suction cup marks that Mark had on his exposed flesh. Correction, they were both hickeys and suction marks, courtesy of Ursula's mouth and tentacles. "You clearly got some well-deserved fun last night," Naruto said to his roommate. "Ursula is a rather affectionate woman," came Mark's defense as they entered the building. "Clearly. She is really into you, and you being relatively dead got her to question quite a lot about your relationship," Naruto says with a grin that was a mix of teasing and genuine. Getting into the scheduled courtroom, the pair soon found Leonard, who appeared to be in a better mood after these past few days. "Hiya." Naruto greeted the DOI wizard. "Hey. You okay?" Naruto asked, a bit concerned. "Doing fine. Just needed a good night's sleep," Leonard says, stifling a yawn. "That's good," commented Mark. "With some good weed to mellow me out," said Leonard, pulling out a small Ziploc with some rolled up joints. "Found this good place sold by druids who really know their stuff." Both Naruto and Mark rolled their eyes as they watched the court session proceed. "Ratso demon, please rise," said the judge. The demon put on trial looked Italian to a degree, or at least a stereotypical Italian given his hairstyle. Said demon floated in the air before speaking up. "It's pronounced Enrico, ma'am. You are hereby ordered to return Bob and Maxine Lane their souls." "Why's that?" the demon asked. 30-day grace PRD upon making any deals with said devil or any devil-like entities, the judge says. Ratso got back onto the ground before pulling out a pair of Ziploc bags. Each contained some glowing liquids, which were in fact souls, before handing them over to a couple seated nearby. Both weakly grasped onto the bags before opening them up to obtain their souls back into their bodies. Furthermore, continued the judge, you are to attend DOI proper parenting classes until such time as our esteemed instructors deem you a fit parent. She's looking at us. Leonard mutters with a grin. That's hilarious, both Mark and Naruto say at the same time. Jinx, you owe me some ramen, Naruto says with a grin, making Mark sigh in defeat for his poor wallet, knowing how much of the noodle dish the blonde could eat. At the DOI. Inside of the classroom, Naruto and Mark were conducting another class for the day. Okay, today we need to talk about parenting. Not just in the USA, but anywhere else out there. What the hell do you know about parenting? What are you, like 10? An Easter Island head man asked skeptically. Fair question. Began Naruto. To begin with, it's quite an interesting topic. Right, and you know what a big game changer in one's life. Having a baby. Said Mark as he continued. It's a rather important decision for any couple or individual to make. Quite the amount of responsibility for them to have, wanting to raise a child for a number of reasons. Naruto went on from here as he listed off some examples. Wanting to contribute to society. Help progression, or even leaving behind their legacy one way or another. These factors and more are thought of quite often. But more often than not, it's so one could have someone to connect with and have some emotional relief. Teacher, that is all well and good, but answer the question. Croatian man pointed out. Fair enough, and I know plenty about parenting. For example, I know that parents should not shake the baby. Mark says after opening up a book on parenting. It also says you never steal demon babies and sell them on the black market, he adds on, pretending to look at the book before shifting his gaze. Ratso soon looked at Mark skeptically. Why you gotta look at me like that when you said that? Because you're holding a pricing gun and putting price stickers on the baby's head. Naruto says dryly as Enrico uses the gun to add another sticker. Don't listen to him and don't be a pages. He's a lying ass. Look at the tell. Brain says before using his brain stem to point at Enrico. Those in the classroom could see Ratso has a jerky leg, rapidly going up and down. Jiggly knee, Eric the robot points out as he sits next to Enrico. Okay, confession time. Is this really your baby or did you steal him from someone? Mark asks, looking at Enrico. Really? How come? You just don't strike me as father material. I mean, what does he eat? Mark says, trying to point out the lack of parental knowledge Enrico has, or at the very least get him to admit to stealing the baby from another demon. Enrico was silent for a moment before voicing out random things at the top of his head. Baby things, poker chips, grass, energy drinks. And what's his name? Naruto asks with a raised eyebrow. Choking victim. Enrico states, almost sounding like it was a question. Both Naruto and Mark glanced behind them to see one of the health posters, which held a diagram on the Heimlich maneuver to help out a choking victim. Where's the baby? Blurted out the worm person rather suddenly. Let me ask the questions here. Mark says, trying to stay in charge. No, stupid, the baby is literally missing. Brain says with a roll of his eye. Looking at the stoler, the demon baby was nowhere to be found. Hey, what do you know about that? Enrico says with a shrug. Naruto whipped around and saw the demon baby crawling out of the window. Instantly, he rushed over and jumped out just when the baby fell out of it. He miraculously caught the baby, performed a front flip all before landing several stories down. Made it. Naruto says with a sigh of relief, causing the demon baby to giggle and smile, which caused Naruto to sweat drop. You are going to be a little hellion, aren't you? Naruto asked with a glare. Of course the baby soon tried to claw his face out, making Naruto hold it away from him as it tried to thrash about. Aw! It's Tora all over again. He screamed out, having a brief flashback to the demon cat and bane of all Konoha genin teams. Make it stop. Yeah, Tora left a significant mark in his life with a subconscious bit of trauma and was probably one of the reasons other than the fact he had a smoking hot succubus girlfriend that he never found any of the many different species of cat girls that lived in New York attractive. After the baby continued to try and claw and slash at Naruto's face for a bit longer, he gave the baby a stern glare before saying, "Enough," in a deep powerful voice. Instantly the baby halted its attempt to claw his face off before crying rather loudly. Naruto exhaled a sigh before trying to rock the baby to and fro. Back in the classroom, Mark looked away from the scene below before focusing back at Enrico. "Alright, then. Enrico, I'm afraid you left me with no other option. My colleague and I assume control over the baby until said time that he can be placed in a proper home." "Yo. I'm heartbroken over here," Enrico says blankly before seeing a flyer fly by the window in the wind. "Oh, look, buy one get one free hot dogs and an OTB over here," he says before dashing out of the room and building, causing Mark to sigh and pinch the bridge of his nose at not only the lack of care towards his supposed child but also the way in which Enrico talked. Coming outside of the DOI building, Mark saw Naruto sitting on the steps as he was holding a small bottle of milk with a plastic NPL attached he acquired from the nearby gas station. He was presently feeding the demon baby as best as possible as a safety team was securing the little area. "So what's the process for the demon baby?" "Same as hazardous waste," said a DOI sanitation/hazardous waste disposal worker. "Contain him overnight in a steel cage unit until we can properly deport the kid back to hell. But there's an orphanage right across the street." Mark pointed right behind the man he was talking to. "I could just walk him over there myself." Not my problem," the worker said uncaringly before walking away. "Mark, why don't you go see if you can find out if the kid is actually Enrico's while I look after the baby," Naruto says. "I'll go do that. Good luck." Just as Mark went inside to do his little investigation, Callie came out as well to clear her head. She was having to deal with several issues with new immigrants having disability problems. Each was rather complicated, especially one who had issues being unable to stand up properly for the pledge allegiance to the flag. But of course she had to remember he was a paraplegic and couldn't do so. Having cleared her head, she made to go back inside before she caught a whiff of something that made her turn her head around 180 degrees and her eyes to glow red. As she did that, the baby mirrored her action. "If you were not a demon, I would be really concerned about seeing that. You know you like it and find it rather hot when I do it when you're doing me from behind," Callie says with a smirk before both she and the baby twisted their heads back to normal. "It is, but outside of SEC it's rather unsettling." "Fair enough. Now is that a demon baby?" Callie asks. "Obviously. He's a part of this custody case Mark and I are dealing with. Figured I would show him a good time and take care of him as we work this whole mess and he either ends up with his parents or an orphanage," Naruto says, explaining the situation to her. "The orphanage?" Callie said, sounding saddened by the idea of the demon baby having to grow up alone in an orphanage. The succubus soon reached out, having her index finger nearly touching the baby. In turn, the infant did the same. The moment their fingers touched, something rather odd happened. "Oh my dark lord. Did your melons grow a full cup size just when you touched the baby?" "And no. Are you sure?" "Why, you're just seeing things." Callie's melons swelled up again, making her shirt strain even more, trying to hold them back. There. It happened again. Your melons are nearly the size of Tsunade's now," Naruto says, pointing at Callie's chest. Instantly, Callie covered up her bub with her hands. "Stop staring. And who is this Tsunade woman? You are usually find me staring at them, and she was someone who was like my mother figure," Naruto says. I am. But not like this," Callie says, sounding a bit embarrassed. "Okay, sorry. I get it. You're embarrassed on the sudden change," he said awkwardly. "Is it still about the 3-hole this morning?" "I did apologize and all," Naruto says. "No, not that, Naruto. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go and get some baby supplies, he said, walking away from her. I'll see you later, hun. Callie watched Naruto walk away carrying the baby with a forlorn and sad look on her face. A flamingo man came on by with a bottle of water and was about to step inside when he stepped back out. Ma'am. Yeah. I just wanna ask, but do you know you appear to be lactating fire? Callie looked down and sure enough her tips were lactating twin streams of fire through her shirt. Okay, that's new, she says before noticing the flamingo man was holding a bottle of water. May I? She asked pointing at the water bottle. Go right ahead. Callie took the bottle of water from the flamingo man and poured a decent amount out to quench the lactating flames. The moment this occurred, the smoke coming out went into the nearby air vents. They traveled through the ventilation shafts and oddly enough went into a board room where Twain was presenting a meeting. Now we can't cancel employee health benefits for spouses, but we can encourage divorce. Twain says before he smells the smoke and a large bony curved and barbed spear erupts from his chest in a segmented fashion. That is going to be an issue, Twain says looking down at the bone spear. Unknown location. It was in the middle of the night and situated on a queen-sized bed was Callie. She was sweating all over and was experiencing pain like no other. Her limbs were tied back to each of the bedposts with Naruto hovering nearby. And surrounding the pair were a litany of people as they were holding candles. Among them was Callie's mother, Mark, Ursula, and even Callie's father Aldermock. Honey, you're doing great, Naruto said in encouragement. Oh God, it's happening, screamed out the succubus. The pain she was experiencing was like no other. It wasn't pleasant at all, but outright torture. It's going to be okay honey, you're almost there, just push, Naruto says comfortably down by Callie's spread legs. Callie let out a series of yells of intense pain before screaming one last time as she pushed before the sound of crying was heard. Callie's office doi. Instantly, Callie gasped for air before rapidly panting. Her eyes were dilated for the briefest of moments as she tried calming herself down. Gazing around, she saw she was back in her office. DMN, that's one hell of a nightmare, she muttered, before placing a hand to her face to rub her eyes. At that moment, she felt something moist. Pulling back, she saw a weird pink secretion stretched out from her face to her hand. Oh, come on, I'm in heat, she said realizing what was going on as she saw the same secretion all over the top of her desk. However, despite realizing she was in heat, something about this was outright different than the previous times. Things would have been difficult or awkward getting out of her office covered in her secretions the way she was. Fortunately for her, she has her special room she and her boyfriend share connected to the adjacent wall. After taking a good, quick shower to clean herself up, Callie decided to call it a day and leave the office. Upon making her way to the elevator to get to the parking garage downstairs, she had to share the space with Twain, who had the large bony protrusion coming out of his chest. Neither demon looked or talked to each other as both were going through an embarrassing situation as they clearly wanted to be anywhere else than here. Callie began lactating fire again, making her pull out another water bottle to douse the flames with a hiss, leaving 2 scorch marks on her white shirt. That's 4 shirts today, she mutters to herself, annoyed as well. She doesn't mind going through multiple shirts a day, that was only if said shirts were ruined by Naruto before or during a round of hot and steamy raunchy section. With Naruto. Naruto had decided that he would show the demon baby a good time, especially if the baby was to end up in an orphanage or back in hell. That being the case, he decided to first take the baby to a pizza place called Ducky Cheese's, and unknown to him Callie was watching him enter the restaurant from behind 2 parked cars across the street. Devil, she may be a ninja, but not so much, Naruto thought as he sensed Callie and had to admit she was better than an amateur. However, in his moment of distraction the demon baby had wiggled out of his arms and crawled over to a ball pit where it was currently chewing on the head of a toddler who was screaming. Hearing the scream, Naruto rushed over and managed to pull the baby off without injuring the toddler. The demon baby saw Naruto glaring at him and decided not to make him angry after the earlier incident when it tried to claw and scratch him. So stern and loving, Callie thought lovingly, thinking it would be amazing to have a baby with him and he'd be a very attractive father. After leaving the pizza place, Naruto decided to take the baby to the park, and as the two were sitting on a bench, a squirrel ran up onto the bench only for the demon baby to grab it and eat it in one bite, making Naruto give the baby a look as the squirrel's tail was hanging out of his mouth. Impressive, Naruto said as the baby ate in the tail, finishing his snack. While hiding behind a tree nearby, Callie was hiding and let out a whine upon seeing the scene. Heading back to the apartment, Naruto walked in to see Randall sitting on the couch, oddly enough playing a first-person shooter game where you killed zombies. Putting aside the oddity of that, Naruto gave his zombie roommate a glance. "How did you manage to reattach your head from earlier?" he asked. "I don't want to talk about it," Randall said before noticing the baby Naruto was carrying. "Oh, a baby, hell yes, I love these things. Not going to lie, that wasn't the reaction I was expecting from you," Naruto said a little warily. "Are you kidding? These things are total clam bait. For some reason women can't resist these little shriek bags. That being the case, do I still have time for happy hour?" Randall says, causing Naruto to sigh as he should have known it was a reason related to sleeping with a woman. "Randall, I am not taking the baby to a bar," Naruto says with a deadpan stare. "You know those things do drink booze, right?" Randall said to him. "Yeah, but it's not good for them," Naruto says, as while demon babies could and did drink/were given alcohol, it wasn't something they should have a lot of or often. "Listen, it's his first time. It'll be fine, we will be in and out in an hour tops," Randall said to him, causing Naruto to sigh in resignation. 30 minutes later at the bar. "Here you go," the bartender said as he set down a fresh drink in front of Naruto as he sat down at the bar. "Hey, is this the baby buying rounds on my tab again?" Randall asked the bartender. "Nope, this is for him," he said, gesturing to Naruto. "I didn't order this," Naruto said, looking at the drink. "It's from the Total Knockout at the end of the bar," the bartender said, pointing to a brunette with very large melons at the end of the bar who waved at Naruto with a smile. "Mind giving this to that hot brunette?" Naruto said, giving a note to the bartender. Said brunette was infuriated as she waited, but when she retrieved the note, she was surprised by what she read. "Like the look, but I much prefer your real self, Callie." "How'd you know it was me?" Callie asked, turning back after she walked over to him, and was glad he didn't hit on other women as it made her feel much safer and she could trust him more. "I knew you had been following me and watching from afar all day, Callie. So it was a safe bet that it would also be you that would send me a drink while disguised as a bombshell. Though I do have to say we are going to be putting your ability to shapeshift like that to use later on," Naruto says with a predatory grin that sends a shiver down Callie's spine. "Hey, I've been thinking, you ever thought about kids?" Callie asked, petting the baby Naruto had. "Of course, I was an orphan and would have liked nothing more than a family growing up. So I ended up really wanting kids as I got older. However, I have to ask, where did all of this come from?" Naruto said, surprising her. "Well, seeing you with that demon baby all day has stirred up some confusing emotions. I was trying to be what I thought you wanted. Callie, what I want most of all is you just being yourself, as that's the woman I fell in love with," Naruto says, reaching up and cupping her cheek in his hand, rubbing it affectionately. Hearing this and feeling Naruto caress her cheek so lovingly, combined with her hormones being out of whack due to being in heat, resulted in Callie grabbing Naruto by the collar of his shirt and pulling him into a steamy makeout right there at the bar. The two passionately kissed each other while running their hands all over each other and grpng one another. "Bathroom now," Callie said breathlessly. Naruto merely grinned as he picked Callie up with her, wrapping her arms and legs around him, and made his way into the bar's bathroom, making sure to lock the door and put on the occupied sign. For the next hour the bathroom was filled with the sounds of passionate and fierce lovemaking as the two had a quickie in the bathroom, not that anyone outside would know given the seals Naruto managed to put up the moment they entered the bathroom. After their quickie, Naruto sat on what was left of the destroyed sink counter with Callie sitting in his lap, leaning her head against his chest as Naruto held her to him. Do you think we should adopt to start? Callie asked suddenly, as it would be a good way to see if they were ready to be parents without going through the complicated scenario that is PRGNNCY. Well, being an orphan who was never adopted myself, I feel like that would be a wonderful idea and a great way to see if we are ready, as taking care of a child is a lot of hard work. Just ask your mom. Naruto says with a smile before teasing Callie a bit at the end, getting a playful smack to his chest from her. Don't be an ass, but that does wonderful. Callie says as the two just sat there continuing to embrace each other. 20 minutes later. Hold on. Naruto kissed Callie's neck as he glared at the bartender who fed his baby $800 worth of booze which he was not paying for. Giving the bartender a brutal glare complete with his death mask popping it much like it had the other day was more than enough for the weak-willed bartender to comp the drinks. Do you ever stop being so hot? Callie asked, as even after their romp in the bathroom Naruto still made her feel hot. Probably not, so how do you want to deal with this guy? Naruto asked, as if he was being honest. He knew the bare minimum of demon babies. Just keep him restrained. Callie said, as demon babies needed to be restrained as they were wild and more impulsive than adult demons somehow. 2 hours later. I'm gonna beat the SHT out of Mark. Naruto said as he had to admit that this baby was a difficult scenario as the father was an idiot and everything he did spoke incompetent parent. I swear this kid is too Jersey Shore for my taste. Callie said as this baby all but killed her HAREM levels. Hey, you got something to say? The baby said in a baby voice before whimpering as Naruto and Callie glared at him, shutting him up. Apparently the baby was now able to talk a bit as it was nearing its first molt in which it would become a toddler. Hey, wanna go take a look at the kids? Maybe we'll find a cute half-demon or half-god there. Naruto said jokingly. Callie smiled as after they got rid of this kid she'd like that. After they called Mark and informed him of what happened, both of them took a shot at the father and Mark before leaving both injured men to wallow in their own stupidity. Hey, wanna hear something funny? Callie asked him with a grin as he nodded. Well, earlier today, she begins. Flashback. Wait, I would have to fight Naruto to the death. Yeah, I don't like my odds for that. Maybe we can make a deal instead. Twain said, rubbing his chin. For Callie, I don't think Naruto is gonna give up his side piece. The F did you call me? Leonard was saying till Callie interrupted him. Oh, F it, I'm outta here. Leonard said as he teleported out of the room. Naruto is my man. If you think he'd pawn me off, you're F dumber than you look. Callie said as Naruto made the ultimate promise to her by marking her as his and she accepted. Come on Callie, we're engaged. Twain said, flexing his pecs. Callie glared at him so intensely it was as if death itself looked at Twain, making him sweat a bit. On second thought, maybe I can just talk to Naruto about maybe making a deal for the demon baby. Gotta go now. Twain says before running out of the room. End flashback. You know I'd never part with you, right? Naruto said as he kissed her. Callie shivered as there was an unspoken. You are mine, which made her crave Naruto even more so than before. Few minutes later. They have one of everything, seriously. Naruto said, seeing many species of children. Callie was looking at Naruto wondering what child would get his attention. Naruto saw all the children and froze as he looked at one. What the hell, he said, looking at a specific child that was a dead ringer for someone he knew. Callie stopped seeing a small girl looking about 4 and she had to admit there was a certain look that made her seem like she was actually their child, as she had spiky hair in a ponytail and her hair was purple and red that matched Callie's red hair. Anko? Naruto said in surprise as the girl looked at him curiously. Naruto, you know her? Callie asked curiously. I guess I mean she's cut me up before and drank my BLD when I was just a kid. Naruto said to her. Aw, that's adorable. Callie said as she looked at the adorable little succubus girl. Naruto and Anko were still sharing looks and it was clear only one of them knew the other. She doesn't remember me. Naruto thought, also noticing she didn't have her curse mark. Did it do this to her? He thought to himself as the curse mark gave someone a demonic appearance, but to make an actual hybrid, He knew much of Anko's life was basically like his own, so he felt even more inclined to give her an actual childhood. 1 hour later. Why? Aldermach Maggotbone said as he screamed down to hell. My daughter did something good and adopted, and she's not gonna even eat the child, he said in agony. Naruto and Callie rolled their eyes at this as Callie flipped a coin of which parent she'd tell first, and he won. You're a pages. Anko said, sounding bland and cute. All the adults looked at the little girl. What did you say to me? Aldermach Maggotbone said, glaring at Anko. I said you're a weak pages. Anko walked up to him, and in a burst of speed she jumped up and grabbed his horns and did a spiral spin and sent him through a wall. So glad I don't live here. Callie said to her boyfriend. I might actually start to like your adopted daughter, Callie, Aldermach said, walking through the hole in the wall and brushing himself off. Yeah, you didn't have a choice. Callie said, smiling at Anko as she laughed. Happily. Sir, I hope you know my daughter broke your horn, and earlier before seeing you, she somehow found your car and began popping the tires. Naruto said to Callie's father. Correction, I might start to really like your adopted daughter. Aldermach says with a slight smile. I'm so proud. Callie said with a smile as a tear came out her eyes. 1 hour later. Ha! Rosie said excitedly to her daughter as she squeezed her granddaughter in a tight bear hug. She understands, she can't harm this one, right? Naruto asked Callie curiously. She knows. Callie said as she went over the basics of being a succubus with Anko. Can't breathe. Anko managed to get out despite the bear hug. Suck it up, sweetie, a mother's love is torturous. Callie said as Naruto laughed. Hey, I have a question for you, she said as she got up close. Would you like to move in with me, she asked as Mark really was bad and Randall was too weird. Yep. Naruto said as he kissed her. I'll make you a deal, you push them to marriage and I'll get you as much candy as your belly can handle, bonus, if you also get them to give you a little sibling. Rosie whispered to Anko, who smiled deviously at the offer and chance to mess with her parents while acting cute and dumb. Later in Naruto's office. Oh F me, you reproduced. Lenord said, seeing Anko. Lenord, stop. So nice to meet you. Mark said to Anko, kneeling down. Hi. Anko said, hugging him. Ah. Mark said with a smile. She just stole his wallet. Everyone thought, varying in reactions. Naruto expected it, Leonard laughed, Callie looked like a proud mother, and Grimes was actually impressed and made a mental note to keep his own wallet secured to his pants with a chain from now on. Anko managed to sneak off and saw Twain strapped to his desk and saw the chest bone that was partially sawed into. So what's this loser's deal? She asked. Twain needs to have his man bone sawed off or it could become infected, which is honestly bad for him. Mark said, trying to explain what Twain needed done in a PG way to the young girl. It won't hurt. Anko said as she jumped up to the ceiling using it as a springboard, and as she shot down aiming toward the chest bone she did an axe kick, snapping it off at its base, making Twain scream in agonizing pain before passing out. Huh, you were right, sweetie, that didn't hurt at all. Callie said with a proud smile, getting a smile from Anko and a shudder from Leonard and Mark. Your first trophy, we should get it stuffed and maybe mounted on my wall. Callie said, picking up Twain's severed appendage as she wanted to see Twain's discomfort every time he saw his chest bone. Anko looked at it for a moment before shaking her head. Too small, not worth it, Anko said, causing Callie to burst out into laughter. Are we 100% sure she's not their actual kid? Leonard said, backing away from the little girl. I was certain at first, but after seeing that I am not sure now. Mark said, also backing away slightly. That was the day the company grew to fear the small family, as even by demon standards, they were terrifying. Late at night. Callie watched as Naruto tucked their daughter into her new bed in her new room. After the new family had left the DOI, they had gone to Naruto's apartment and packed up his stuff before stopping at a department store to pick up some stuff for Anko. The family had gone to Callie's and moved everything in before having a brief dinner and heading to bed after a tiring day. With the present issue of Naruto's room at the other apartment, he told Randall he will still pay his share of the rent and bills until the lease is to be renewed. The zombie was fine and understanding, just so long as Naruto paid on time. A kind father, vicus fighter, great at SEC, and now we're living together, she thought as both her human and demon sides desired Naruto greatly. All that's missing is the wedding. Walking over to her new daughter, Callie ran her hand through Anko's hair before kissing her forehead. "Good night, sweetie. You're gonna destroy the world," she said, and thought kindly, "or at the very least rule it after your father and I step down." Of course, she thought as her daughter had the right bearings. Seeing their new daughter already falling asleep, the couple decided to head to their own bed, but sleep was not what they had in mind. Walking into their room, Naruto made sure to activate the silencing seals he installed while moving his stuff in so that none of the noise from their activities would leave the room. However, they could still hear noise outside the room just in case Anko needed something. Today sure was an eventful day to say the least. Naruto said with a smile as he strpped out of his shirt and made to undo his unders. It sure was, and you're gonna get something special tonight as a reward. Callie said as her stomach opened, revealing a glowing hole. My 3-0, she said to him. Guess that's where the chest bone was supposed to go. Naruto thought to himself as he had an idea. Oh my god. Callie thought, seeing Naruto enter 6 paths mode, feeling his power radiate in the air. In all honesty, I have never tried it with this before, so this is a first for the both of us. Naruto says, gesturing to his 6 paths mode. Callie as he got closer and screamed in total bliss when something shot out of his chest and into her 3-0, did he just make an appendage out of his chest? She screamed in pleasure. Okay, no demon woman can ever find out about this. Ever, she thought, as no demon woman liked the barbed PP demon men had or the spiky chest bone. Naruto then lifted Callie up by her thighs as he made a pair of chakra construct arms to wrap around and grope her melons as he lined up his PP with her dripping wet PP. And my favorite part, Callie thought, as Naruto still had his construct in her 3-0 and now was gonna F her. You ready, Callie? Naruto asked, probing her entrance with his PP while the PP construct in her 3-0 pulsed slightly, getting a from the succubus. Yes, take me, Callie said breathlessly, as just having his construct in her 3-0 was nearly making her orgasm, and she shuddered to think what it would be like to have both her 3-0 penetrated as well as her PP. Naruto had to admit this was weird, especially the glowing, as Callie was now shining his favorite color. I'll die without this man. Callie thought to herself as she wanted to be like this forever, with Naruto screwing her till death. Naruto began sawing both his PP and the PP construct in and out of Callie's holes. When he thrusted his hips in, burying his PP deep into her PP, he made the construct pull out a bit. Then when he pulled his hips back, he would move the construct into her 3-0, sending mind-shattering pleasure through her body. Death. Callie thought, her mind flashing toward all the men she dated before she met Naruto. I'll kill them all, she thought, as killing former mates was a thing demon women could do in order to purify themselves, as it basically meant it never happened between them. DMN, you're tight in both of your oles, Naruto grunted out as he continued to launder her depths. Ah, this feels insane. Callie yelled in pleasure, her whole body and even her soul quaking in pleasure from the pending she was receiving. Oh, then I wonder how you will like this, Naruto says as he begins to make the construct PP vibrate in Callie's 3-0, causing her eyes to widen in shock and roll into the back of her head as she shrieks in pleasure. Her PP clamped down on Naruto's PP like a vice as she soaked his PP with her release, causing him to grunt as the pressure caused him to reach his own CLMX and begin filling her depths with his seed. The force of his own CLMX combined with Callie shaking and spasming in his arms caused him to lose his balance, sending them falling back onto Callie's bed, the force of which lodged his PP deeper into the succubus's PP, piercing her CRVX and pressing against the back of her WMB, heightening her orgasm. For the next several minutes the two would lay there climaxing and shaking in pleasure until finally they subsided. That was indescribable, Callie says breathlessly, her chest heaving as she tried to regain her bearings after the mind-shattering orgasm she just had. Yeah, that was insane, Naruto says, breathing a bit heavily as well, given the force of his release was quite intense as well. Taking a few more breaths, Naruto then gained a smirk as he made another construct PP, this one located just above his actual PP, making it poke at Callie's peach, causing her eyes to widen. But it's not over yet, he says, making the construct pierce her peach. Naruto pulled back on Callie's arms as he made her ride both his PP and the constructed PP in her peach, while he made the chest construct PP extend and wrap around her chest before inserting back into her 3-hole while also vibrating. He is going to shatter my mind with pleasure, was Callie's last coherent thought she could remember of the night, as the rest of the night was filled with Callie's screams. As the woman no longer screamed to Satan, she screamed only to Naruto, as Naruto was now officially in her mind the only being in the world worth worshipping, as the lovers passionately and fiercely made love the entire night. Next morning. Callie had no demonic urges the next morning, feeling entirely human as all her demonic urges were sated last night. I almost couldn't close my 3-hole last night, she thought in pleasantness as Naruto once again sated her and showed her a world of pleasure. Now to hunt down my exes, she thought, as it would be a BLD bath of epic proportions. Should I take Anko for a little mommy-daughter murder time? She thought to herself, remembering how she caused Twain so much pain destroying his chest bone. The moment Naruto left for work, both the women in his life went to work. 1 hour later. This guy is gross, Anko said as she decapitated a man's head, and he looked very old. He was, trust me, Callie said as she wasn't vain enough to not admit that the people she dated were terrible even by demon standards. Granted, she never actually slept with any of them, but that didn't stop a lot of them from trying to push her into doing it with them. The mother and daughter duo were having a blast, Callie impressed by her daughter's technique and helped her refine it. 6 hours later. Can we do this again? Anko said, covered head to toe in BLD. Callie smiled proudly as they just killed 40 people, as the place they were was famous for orgies and she wanted to be sure they got her ex, so they just killed everyone. To be young with so much bloodlust, maybe we can kill some more demons and a few monsters and humans, she thought amusedly. With Naruto. He's been here all day. Naruto asked Lenorad as he was clocking out and saw Twain on the floor since yesterday. Yeah, apparently your daughter pulled his chest bone by the root and he's suffering more. Leonard said to him as Naruto took out his phone and sent a picture to Callie. Naruto soon got a message from Callie, I love our daughter, so violent and causing long overbearing suffering, it said, followed by a few devil and crying emojis and then some SXL ones indicating she was corny for him. She may not remember, but she's still Anko, he thought with a smile, a little glad there was some of the old Anko still in her. I am glad I can bring happiness into her life, she deserves it. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for more crossovers. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author pyrohelixdrago on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.